How bad could it get if Trump wins and Democrats just refuse to accept it? People are going to start to throw around the word coup. Is that possible? Is that going to happen? We've got our friend David Reboy in the mix right now. He's going to address that and more with us. He's a political commentator. David, good to have you back on the show.
Great to be with you.
So, there was this piece, what was it, a Michael Anton piece, The Coming Coup. Take us through this thinking. What are people, political analysts, commentators on the right seeing as a possibility? What do you see as a possibility if Democrats lose this election?
Sure. I think the seeds of this were really planted several months ago. You may even say several years ago with something as seemingly innocent and absurd as Stacey Abrams refusing to concede in Georgia, in the Georgia gubernatorial race. And many of us thought, hey, this is crazy. This is someone who is untethered from reality. But the purpose of that little kind of mini campaign was to alert Democrat partisans that, hey, look, the Republicans are disenfranchising minority voters, and they're doing it in a systematic way to the point where you can have where you can have many people, establishment kind of legitimate people, believing that there was actually a stolen election in the state of Georgia. We saw it from the very top of Democrat politicians, all the way to commentators, and it's just been conventional wisdom. So that idea with Stacey Abrams was to sort of implant it into the minds of people that, yes, Republicans want to disenfranchise, Republicans want to steal your votes. Fast forward to now, when after the virus, Democrats and never Trumpers and really the left sat down and they said, you know what, we're going to concentrate fully on making sure that we have mail-in ballots. And mail-in voting is, everyone who is not, a total Democrat partisan will tell you that mail-in voting is kind of an invitation to fraud. Had they been really serious about serious about wanting to come up with a system in which people who are concerned about the virus and older folks who didn't want to go out to the polls vote, then they could have launched a campaign saying, hey, make sure that you get a legitimate absentee ballot and vote that way. But they didn't want to do that. Instead, they want to do fraud. So which brings us to the coup and Anton's great kind of viral essay that has been all around the internet for the last couple of days, in which he kind of lays out a pattern, and it's a really sobering pattern of Democrats at the highest levels basically saying, you know what, we're not going to concede no matter what happens on election day. And you already have a lot of Democrat Party messaging going out and saying that, you know what, Trump could win in a landslide on election night, but don't worry, he will certainly lose. There will be a red mirage that will disappear within a few days or weeks based on the result of the mail-in voting. So they're gaming out scenarios in which there's no way that Trump will win. And they're also gaming out scenarios in which there's no way that Joe Biden will concede, even if he loses legitimately. So we're going into a really dark period in American history right now. And I think the more people talk about it in advance of it happening, the better, because we really don't want to be caught flat-footed here.
Speaking of David Reboy, political commentators down in Florida joining us now. Speaking of that, David, how is Florida looking these days? I see, obviously, in most of the polling, it's considered a toss-up, but you're on the ground there. Any idea how you think it's currently trending?
So I definitely think it's trending red. I think I said on Twitter that I was not at all surprised when the new polling is out saying that Trump is doing very, very well in Dade County here in Miami with Hispanic voters and Latino voters in general. And I think that has a lot to do with. I don't think it has to do with the Cuban population and socialism and things like that. I think it has more to do with the law and order message of the Trump campaign and the fact that the Democrats are very clearly against cops, very clearly against law enforcement, and a lot of folks down here who are in law enforcement are Hispanic and Latino. It's just a very it's a kind of very popular profession down here, and as soon as a political party is seen as going after cops and going after law enforcement the way the Democrats have, then I'm sorry, you're going to lose a lot of support from these people.
What do you see as and back to that coup point for a second, I want to ask you this. What do you see as a worst case scenario Democrat plan of action if, sure enough, election night Biden loses, and let's say, a week passes and there's not some avalanche of mail-in ballots that they can point to? How do you think that plays out if they just go from resistance to obstinacy, intransigence? We're just not going to accept this.
I mean, I think their plan is to follow a color revolution plan, and there have been a couple pieces in Revolver, the new site, that kind of trace the lineage of what color revolutions are, usually in Eastern Europe and in other parts of the world, and what that means is it's a tactic by way of delegitimizing a government that is said to be authoritarian. So they say, you guys are authoritarians, so we're now going to put people into the streets. We're going to tell everybody that you have in fact stolen the vote. And the other thing is we're going to showcase police brutality. So this is exactly the playbook that the Democrats have undertaken over the last year, really. Whether or not it's going to work, I'm not sure. I happen to think that they're overplaying their hand right now. I think that as Trump is gaining in the polls, it is a reaction to the riots, the inability of Democrats to rein in their most hardcore and violent supporters on one hand. On the other hand is really, I mean, the Democratic Party is the party of the radical left and the people who want to tear down statues. Those people aren't voting Republican. And I think just like we saw in the UK last year, when given a choice between patriots and anti-patriots, Americans, just like the British, will choose the patriots. And I also think that by then, after the election, no matter what happens, people will have, the patience of most Americans has, nobody wants the riots anymore. Nobody wants the street action. Nobody is thrilled by, BLM protesters burning down cities. No, that's whatever spasm of guilt that happened in America after the killing of George Floyd, and throughout the summer, all that is gone. All the sympathy is gone, and people no longer want to hear it. And no matter how much the Democrats hate Trump and how much they're willing to burn the country to the ground if he wins again, I really don't think that the American people will stand behind them. I think they've kind of lost the sympathy of most Americans.
David Reboy, follow him on social media and look for his next magnum opus online. David, thanks so much for joining, man. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
To mask or not to mask? That is the question, is it not? Well, no, we're told we have to mask. It's irresponsible not to. Okay. When, who, for how long, under what circumstances? All of that stuff. Okay, well, let's take a step back for a minute. Let's take a step back. you might be able to convince me that masking indoors when there's high-risk people around, I don't know. Maybe it works pretty well. Fine. Okay. Outside, still never seeing any real evidence that it works. All right. But what about for little tiny babies? Should we force masks on little itty bitty babies? You had a video that went viral yesterday from the UK of a family, I believe a South Asian family of British citizenship, and they were being hounded by police officers because they could not get their 19-month-old baby to mask up on a plane. Now let's pull. Oh, and they not only did they threaten the family and say, sorry, these are the rules, but you have to get off the plane or else, if you don't mask him. And I'm not sure if they threatened jail for them, but they definitely were, you do this, or it was an or else situation. Mask up your 19-month-old. I don't know that much about kids because I don't have any, but I know when you're 19 months, you're like a little squishy thing that wears a onesie, right? You're a tiny, tiny kid. I don't think you walk or anything. I don't know. I don't know how old 19-month-olds are, but that's little. And God, I sound like one of these, like the old Uncle Bachelor who's like, yeah, the kid is 19 months. He's probably old enough to drive, right? I don't know anything. But when you're 19 months old, I know it's tough to get you to wear a mask. I also know that you're basically no risk by the science whatsoever to transmit COVID to anybody. And if you get COVID, you're also at effective zero risk, right? Okay. And now we get to what happened. They shut down the whole flight. They told everybody off the plane, the 19-month-old baby is not masking up. And I say, okay, let's take this apart for a minute. Because I just flew a few times. I was on 4 flights in the last week. So I know the deal. I know the process. That brings me to this. Explain to me, please. Explain to me why it is that you have to have a 19-month-old baby masked up, but you can sit there, as many people do, with a Coca-Cola in your hand and your mask pulled down for as long as you feel like, and that's fine. Think about what these rules are really telling you. And I know people are sick of the mask talk and everything else. Well, okay, are we sick of stupid tyrants running our lives and sometimes ruining them? Because I'm sick of that. Mask up or else. Put a mask on your baby. If you don't put a mask on your baby, you're a bad person. You're somebody who cannot be trusted. You have to be kicked off the plane. Well, I'm sorry. I refuse to see the absurdity here and not take action. I refuse to see the situation and not call it out. There's a fellow named Yanon Weiss who has a thread on Twitter that I wanted to share with you about masks. And he's just presenting evidence, because people might say, Buck, I try to be very fact and evidence-based in all of my observations and conclusions. And I like to present you with why I think the way I do, where I'm a skeptic that masks are worth the trade-off. I'm skeptical that they're worth. I'm not saying they do nothing, but I'm skeptical. And science, as it actually was practiced in studies until about 4 months ago, would have agreed with me in that position. But okay, here's what. Now it's all changed. Now you're a troglodyte if you don't agree with the newly formed consensus on this. Here's Yanon Weiss's Twitter thread. In science, observations drive conclusion. In politics, conclusions drive observations. A thread about masks. This is not advice not to wear a mask. It is simply sharing information. Share it before Twitter censors it. Okay. He says the politics of masks. There's this matrix he shared, and it has masks required. Cases up. It worked. We told you so. New York, Texas. Cases down, rather. Mask required cases up. It worked. It would have been much worse without masks. Hawaii and Illinois, he cites here. Masks not required, cases down. Georgia, Sweden, ignore this. This is all the politics of masks. And masks not required, cases up. That's what happens with no masks, of course. All right, that's what we're all supposed to believe, and that's what's really happened here. So Yanon goes on to say, nobody wants unnecessary deaths. Wearing a face covering isn't that hard to do, so what's the big deal? Why are we so divided? Yanon Weiss goes on, for one, it's hard to know who to trust. Many officials wear masks when they think the cameras are on them, but then take them off when they think the cameras are off. Dr. Fauci has been caught doing this multiple times. Chicago's mayor and the media were all caught taking off their masks and violating social distancing as soon as their press conference ended, and they thought the cameras were off. Yeah, we've seen other people do this in the White House press corps. Keeps happening. Some politicians and health officials are so desperate to make people believe in masks that they doctor up charts to make their case, even when their own data actually undermines them. It's no wonder people lose trust in some health officials. And he notes that Kansas Democrats put forward a COVID chart that was just false. It just, the state health secretary juiced the numbers to make the governor's mask mandate look successful. So they're lying to you. And you should always be concerned when public officials are lying to you. So what is the actual science, Yanon writes, behind masks? Let's look at some of the hard research, and perhaps Twitter won't censor me for sharing scientific studies. The Center for Evidence-Based Medicine at Oxford summarized 6 international studies which show that masks alone have no significant effect in interrupting the spread of ILI or influenza in the general population, nor in healthcare workers. Very large study out of a super fringe place called Oxford University. Okay. Oxford went on to say that despite 2 decades of pandemic preparedness, there is considerable uncertainty as to the value of wearing masks, warning that this has left the field wide open for the play of opinions, radical views, and political influence. A study of healthcare workers in over 1,600 hospitals showed that cloth masks only filtered out 3% of particles. An article in the New England Journal of Medicine stated wearing a mask outside healthcare facilities offers little, if any, protection from infection, and the desire for widespread masking is a reflexive reaction to anxiety over a pandemic. And then he lists from Cambridge, from the NCBI, from the National Institute of Health, all studies saying the same thing. Studies do show masks can help in the case of direct respiratory droplets, which would matter if somebody's coughing, breathing, or sneezing directly on you in a confined space, but do not help in aerosols. Gee, that's the end quote there. But gee, you don't say.
It's time for roll call.
Roll call, everyone. Everybody, roll call. Let's get it crack-a-lackin'. Thank you so much for joining us to this point in the show. Facebook.com/Buck Sexton. Team Buck at iHeartMedia.com if you want to email. Remember, you can go on Spotify. You can go on the iHeartRadio app and the Apple Podcasts. You can always download the show, listen to it, and please do so. So with that, now let's get to what we got in the roll call. Joseph. Hey, Buck, I've listened to you since 2015. Wow. And must say, congratulations on your success thus far in your career, informing citizens like me with facts and nuance. And I've certainly learned more from you than from my public school education. This message is mainly due to your horrible experience with the barbecue you've recently had in North Carolina. You're going to be hard-pressed to find good barbecue at any large restaurant, but will find delicious vinegar and pepper-based barbecue at one of our many hog cook-ins around the state, where the real homegrown natives cook for pride, not money, and they know their pork will be judged harshly. Joseph, sounds great, man. Invite me to a hog cook-in at some point. That sounds like there's delicious. I mean, pork, I don't know. I like beef so much because of steak and burgers, but pork is definitely my second favorite meat. And it might even be my favorite meat because it's so versatile. There's so many different things you get from pork. Bacon, pork chops, pulled pork, pork and beans. I don't know.
You could have stopped at bacon.
Yeah, I know. Pork may be, if I could only have one meat for the rest of my life, is it, Producer Mark, do you go with beef or do you go with pork?
Out of those two, probably pork, but I mean, chicken's got to be in the mix there somewhere too, right?
I mean, chicken is like the vanilla ice cream of meats. It's always good and it's useful for a lot of things, but do you really get that excited about it?
That's a good point. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But it's the most versatile meat. Is my point.
Most versatile. Yeah, it's the one I eat the most, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And it's probably the healthiest.
Yeah. Man, I'm getting hungry just thinking about that. I'm going to make myself a burger. It's burger time. Kyle, Buck, you brought up the peaceful 93%. How about this comparison by asking a simple question? Which has the higher percentage of wrongful violence? BLM protests or police interactions with unarmed black men? I have to wonder if the body count from the former actually outnumbers the latter in 2020. I'd bet my money that it does. BLM protests or police interactions with unarmed black. Oh, yeah. Well, so you're saying, Kyle, that if you were to look, I mean, the number of police interactions across the country is in the millions every year. I think it might even stretch into the tens of millions of police interactions with civilians every year in this country. So it's like 20, I don't know. I don't know the actual number, but it would be 20 or 30 million a year interactions with cops, and it may even be higher than that. And you have certainly less than 100, usually less than 50, and as low as about a dozen unarmed black men killed by cops every year in America. I can't do the math on that off the top of my head, but it is very, very small. And as I've pointed out to you, this is a straight statistical analysis. There are more people killed by lightning in America every year than there are unarmed black men killed by police in America every year. And, we have that phrase, oh my gosh, struck by lightning, because it's like the most random occurrence. And what could you ever do? More people struck by lightning than unarmed black men killed by police. So I think that puts it into some context as to how, that doesn't mean, if someone gets struck by lightning and dies, that's horrible, right? The family is shattered, and that's a terrible thing. If an unarmed black man gets killed by police, and he wasn't attacking cops or doing something illegal, that's terrible, and they should be punished to the full extent of the law. But it's not indicative of our entire police system at all. Not even close. And it's delusional to claim that it is. But that's the central premise of the BLM movement, absolutely central to it. Okay. Let's see. Next up here, we have Jammy. Hello. I am writing from Switzerland. I just wanted to say that I listen almost every day. I appreciate yours and producer Mark's hard work, along with anyone else working with you guys. Shields high. Oh, and I love Tallulah. Well, thank you so much, Jam. Wait, it probably is Jamie, right?
Yeah, I think Jamie.
Yeah, it's Jamie. I'm going to put on my jammies and go to bed. Jamie, obviously, Buck. Thank you so much for writing in. And yeah, I love Tallulah too. She was looking very cute yesterday. I took some photos of her, which is why you should follow me on Instagram if you don't already. Yeah. All right. Erica, I had to laugh about your comments on the name Ethel. I run a dog boarding kennel, and I have had an Ethel and a Eunice, Leroy, Rufus, and Otto as well. People love to use old-fashioned, out-of-popularity names for their pets. I could see that. Otto is a cool name. You don't hear a lot of people named Otto. And
Otto's a cool name for a dog.
I think it's a cool name. Otto von Bismarck. Come on, that's a cool name. Ethel, Eunice, Dolores. I feel like you never hear anyone named Dolores anymore. You know?
I think there's a good reason for that, and there's an entire Seinfeld episode about it.
Are you serious? I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
I don't think I can explain why correctly on the air without getting an FCC violation.
Esther, as producer Nick points out, another one. That's another name you don't hear a lot of these days. Let me think. What else is in the mix for that one? Archibald? I feel like you don't meet guys named Archibald anymore. Archie?
Well, maybe you do because they're called Archie.
Yeah,
but Archie's still an old-timey name.
Yeah, true. Well, we'll have to see. Anyway, Erica, I'm sure the dog named Ethel is very, very cute. Some famous person is named. There's a young celebrity kid, I think, named Tallulah now. Someone named their kid Tallulah. I forget who it is, but it's definitely a thing that happened out there. So
I thought you were going to say a fan of this show named their kid Tallulah.
It's a great name. There was Tallulah Bankhead, who was an actress, and that's where my parents got the name, I believe. So that's where
I wonder if there's going to be any children Bucks now because of you.
There should be. Just saying, it's a great name. Great name. Very, very masculine name. It is not a lot of people named for a member of the animal kingdom. You know, you don't have a lot of that. You don't have a lot of people walking around named Coyote or I guess there is Wolf. So there's Wolf. That's a name that people will have. But isn't that short for Wolfgang or not always? There are other animals. You know, you could name your kid, Bruce Willis's daughter, producer Nick says, Tallulah Willis. Tallulah Bell Willis. Cool name. Gotta say. Cool name. All right. What do we have here next? Clifford, you asked today, where do we go? Tennessee, baby. Clifford, I think if I were to go to Tennessee, it would be Williamson County, I think it's called. Just south of Nashville. Very beautiful, very red, close enough to Nashville that you can go in for the shows and the food, but it's a redder area, so I think Williamson County sounds pretty nice to me. And Tennessee's I've only been to Nashville once. I love Tennessee. I thought it was a great state. Really enjoyed it. Richard, Buck, happy Hoosier hellos. I hope you rode a moose across a beaver dam while juggling hatchets to impress Snow Princess, because that's what people in Montana do, right? All kidding aside, I have a question for you. How many Steve Schmitz are there in the Republican Party today? Correct me if I'm wrong, but Steve Schmidt helped orchestrate the demise of the McCain campaign. He helped Sarah Palin go from a folksy conservative to an absolutely idiotic crazy woman. Then he was rewarded with that job at MSNBC, and how is it that he gets to have a Northwestern totem in his living room? Shields high. Well, Richard, you know a lot more about Steve Schmidt than I do. I certainly haven't seen this living room setup that he must have for his TV hits. How many stupid Republican consultants are there? I don't know the answer, but I know it's far too many. I know that there's no shortage of dumbasses taking money to pretend they know more about politics than they do. So there's that. I think we all have to remember that. I think that's important. So let's see what else we have here. Thank you so much for writing in. Team, more roll call coming your way now. Linda, aloha, Buck. Listened to the show today. Loved it as always. Wanted to let you know Hawaii as a state is completely shut down again, and Honolulu, once a thriving tourism hub, is closed. Stay-at-home orders again. Articles are saying it could be 10 years before it comes back. And just when things couldn't get any dumber, the mayor, Kirk Caldwell, said now it's okay to go swimming and hiking by yourself, but not with anyone else in your household. Oh, my God. I didn't know that. That is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Swimming and hiking alone has never been a good idea. Earlier this summer, they closed the beach but left restaurants and gyms open. Now it's all closed. Could go on and on with the backwardness of the state, but it would be pointless. Very sorry for all the military members and retirees there. Morale is way down as the military is suffering through these insane mandates as well. It's all self-inflicted at this point. We should just open up, folks. Open it all up. Let people go back to living their lives. That's what should happen. I know there would be cases and bad things would happen, but there are going to be cases and bad things are going to happen anyway. What are we doing? Protect the vulnerable. Put precautions in place. Make the necessary arrangements for people who are at higher risk. That would be a sane response to all of this. That would be a reasonable approach to all of this. But that's certainly not what we're going to have. Stephen, great show. The White House press corps was particularly vicious and apoplectic today. They smelled blood in the political water with the Woodward book. Kayleigh handled them with her usual aplomb and grace. She is so much smarter than them. Yes, Stephen, Kayleigh is indeed much smarter than the members of the White House press corps, but there are many more of them than there are her, so that's always a challenge. That's always a difficult situation. And indeed, let's see what we got here. We have some more coming in. This via Instagram. Via Instagram, we have Frank, who writes, Buenos dias from sunny South Florida, Buck and producer Mark. Trump is winning the Latino vote down here. Bank on it. Trump flags are everywhere. No way Cubans and Venezuelans are voting for socialism. No way. Shields high. Frank, thank you so much for writing in. That would be great. If Trump wins the Latino vote in Florida, that would be such a beautiful repudiation of the Democrats' disgusting tactics and all of this. Producer Mark, did you tell me, is Naples where you're going to go in Florida when you move down there? Is that the move? What's the move?
I think more south, maybe like the Delray Beach general area, like Fort Lauderdale.
Ooh, Delray Beach. Delray Beach, so nice. Like it so much. Is West Palm nice?
That's kind of in the same area, yeah. West Palm, Fort Lauderdale, all the same general area.
I know Palm Beach is very nice, but unless you've been stealing from a cartel drug lord and stashing away cash for years, the beachfront real estate there, producer Mark, is pretty expensive.
Yeah, I believe you're thinking of Boca. That's the very expensive area.
Well, Palm Beach is very expensive.
Well, Palm Beach County in general, yes.
Yeah, Palm Beach is very expensive. Boca is very expensive. That sounds nice. Jupiter's supposed to be very nice, too. I love watching these shows that have the rest of the country where people buy the house. They're like, oh, gosh, like Timmy and Sally need to buy a house. They've got a budget of $250,000. Like,
oh, yeah, HGTV. When I used to have cable, I used to watch it all the time.
I love it. I love watching those shows. And there was a house, I still remember, there was a house that somebody bought in Richmond. I mean, it was pretty pricey. It was like a $400,000 house, I think, maybe $350,000. But it was an old colonial on land close to downtown. And I was just like, this is amazing. You can't even buy a studio apartment in Manhattan for $350,000. One room. Can't even do it.
Yeah, you'll basically get a closet for that much money.
Yeah, but if you go to Richmond, oh, you get like a
It's not just Richmond, it's anywhere else.
A beautiful palace. I know. When I was in North Carolina, the folks there, I was saying, if I moved to North Carolina, what would be they kept saying Wilmington. Wilmington, North Carolina. They say it's on the beach, beautiful town, great weather, great people. You know, Donald Trump's son, Eric's wife, is actually from there. And she's the proud daughter of the city of Wilmington, North Carolina. Not to be confused with Wilmington, Delaware, because then you're in Delaware, which is not quite as exciting. Although the Delaware beaches are kind of a hidden gem on the East Coast. They're very nice. People who don't know, but those Delaware beaches are actually the actual beach. Put aside whether you like the specific town or not. The beach is quite lovely.
I've heard good things about like Rehoboth Beach, I think it's called.
Rehoboth is beautiful. I've been there. Beautiful beach. Yeah, for sure. So anyway, Frank, I hope you're right. And I hope that Trump does win the Latino vote because, it would be amazing just to watch the libs' heads explode. So Fernando writes, what's up, Brosif? So Dr. Fauci wants us to know that folks tend to be stupid and careless over the holidays, so mind the mitigation. That's right. You got to mind the mitigation. You got to do everything you can. You got to make sure that you're doing enough mitigating. You're doing enough of all the mitigation things. You're keeping the mitigation. Stuff like that. Unless you're going to be on the cover of a magazine, then, you got to do what you got to do. Got to mind the mitigation. All right, everybody, that's going to be the show for today. Thank you so much for joining us, for writing in, for hanging out. We appreciate it, as always. Please do pass the buck. And if you can get us to the younger generation in particular, if you got kids that are teenagers or older, tell them to check out this guy, Buck Sexton. We can't just have everybody listening to, random comedian podcasts. We need some substance, like here. All right, everybody, shields high.